huge eyeball appeared in the sky above the city. All the pedestrians were frozen in place by the eye. Only one woman was not. Panicked, she hurriedly searched for someone who was not frozen in place. But after searching for days, she didn't even see a single person. When she was at a loss for words, an older woman who hadn't been immobilized suddenly came up to her. She came up to the woman and asked her, "How long will the system maintenance take?" The woman was instantly confused. Seeing that the woman didn't know what was going on, the woman looked up without panic. Her eyes were frozen in place as she looked towards the sky. She was so frightened by this scene that she rushed to run, but she ran for half a day. She couldn't see a single living soul on the road. All the pedestrians stood motionless on the road with expressionless faces. On her way home, he spotted a traffic cop. When the woman went up to him and asked what was going on, she was told not to panic. It's system maintenance time. The next thing he knew, he was dropping his milk tea and looking up at the sky, realizing that the end of the world was near. The woman rushed back home, calling out her husband's name. She then told her husband everything that had happened outside. The husband was puzzled by this too, but the next moment, he suddenly remembered that it was system maintenance time. He told his wife not to panic too much. After the maintenance period, everything would be back to normal. When the woman saw that her husband was also possessed, she asked him to take her away from here, but the husband didn't listen. Instead, he pulled open the door and walked straight outside. She tried to stop him, but he was already looking into the giant eyeball. He was also frozen in place. Seeing her husband do the same, the woman was so frightened that she immediately locked the door and hid in the house. But she didn't know that she was being watched, for two strangers unlocked the door and came in. The woman tried to defend herself with a knife, but when the young man gave the command, the woman's knife disappeared instantly. After realizing that these two men were not ordinary people, the woman also stopped resisting. She then watched an introduction video with them. It turns out that they are in the game development business. This game allows the player to enter the virtual world. The woman was instantly puzzled. She said she didn't like playing games. She told them to leave, but then the woman panicked at what they said. They claimed that they were the game's customer service, that the woman was in the game world right now. She was actually a man in reality. The reason they came to see her was to get her to quit the game of her own accord, because in reality, he had a heart attack and was in a coma. They wanted to try to save him this way, but the woman thought that if she left here, she would die. She wouldn't agree to anything. Seeing that the woman was still insistent, the guy immediately gave the command. Then a woman slowly approached. Upon seeing this familiar and unfamiliar face, the woman suddenly realized that she had seen her somewhere before. Unbeknownst to her, this woman was actually his wife in reality. Seeing that the system was down for maintenance, was about to end in 20 minutes, the wife took her to the park for a walk, trying to get her to leave with a little time to spare. Seeing that she was still in denial, her wife immediately went up to her and tried to kiss her awake. At last she got up the courage to stand up, faced with a giant eye. Just as she was about to open her eyes, she didn't dare to face them. When she came back to her senses, she was already immobilized. Realizing that she had left the virtual world, the woman chose to flee, because she thought she was a thinking individual. She was not to be swayed by people in a strange world. In order to avoid being tracked by customer service, she hid in a hotel. But before long a pigeon has suddenly flown in. It kept tapping on the glass, as if to signal danger to her. As she wondered what was going on, she suddenly saw that customer service had come to her door. The woman was so frightened that she ran away. The system was down for maintenance with only 5 minutes left. Panicked, she rushed to hide on a rooftop, but just then a man appeared out of nowhere. He claimed to be the administrator of the virtual world. The woman was terrified and trembled, but the man didn't come to persuade her to leave. Instead, he wanted to sign a contract with her. If she signed this contract, she could live in the virtual world forever. But if anything happens to her in the virtual world, the game company would have nothing to do with it. The woman didn't hesitate to sign it. The next second the administrator suddenly disappeared. As the giant eyeball began to count down, the system downtime was over. As the eyeball slowly disappeared, the pedestrians on the road instantly returned to normal. A virtual life began again at this point. It was as if nothing had ever happened, and the woman decides to live on in this virtual world. At the end of the story, she is still a hotel manager. She continues to run the hotel as usual, but in the meantime, she has a new colleague, who is her real-life wife. Apparently, in reality, he had a heart attack and died. The wife comes to the virtual world because she misses him too much. The film tells us that, in the virtual world and in the real world, that we are all unique. Regardless of the world in front of us, try to live your life to the fullest.